Alright, I'm done cutting. This is the last video. Promise. Let's finish this up.
There we go. Here's all the different pieces that have been cut out. Again, I'm just layering these up for you to take a look at them. They're not set yet. They're not spaced yet. We'll be getting into that next. And just so you can see, I haven't put the halo in, but I will be. But I decided to cut up off of the template instead of redrawing those dolphins again. So I'm kind of tired of drawing some things. You know, as I mentioned, I think I've mentioned, I'm sorry if I'm being redundant. I've made multiples of these things due to my errors. So there's another version that I did, the graphite version. And of course, all the various body parts. So, lots and lots of pieces. But that's what happens. So, let's move on to the next part. Hopefully, the videos, the imagery, the text is all working together to help you understand what it is you're going to be doing to successfully complete this project. I know it's a bit jumbled and I'm getting a little confused myself. Maybe the rest of this will be clearer for you. What you see here is the sheet of 11 by 8.5 piece of 80 weight cardstock. Again, you don't need to use this. You can use just regular paper. You could use cardboard, chipboard, whatever you have at hand that you can work with. I find that this works really well, and I happen to have a lot of it, so I like to work with it. But paper can be structural, depending on how you put it together. It can be pretty sturdy. So you'll see these lines. These are the measurements for the sides and outside edge of the frame. This is the background. These are the 1-inch risers. And these are the edges that will, in the end, fold over and be the outside. So the other side of this is the outside of the frame. That's what you'll be seeing. And these are 1/4 inch. Okay. You want to make sure the measurements are even. You want to do a good job at measuring. It's not too difficult to do. If you line up the edge of your ruler, whether it's inches or centimeters, you make those adjustments. But if you line them up to the edges of the paper, these pre-cut edges, you're going to get a nice square area, right? And you come in 1/4 inch, then an inch, and then 1/4 inch in, and then an inch. And you do the same all around, and you draw your lines between those measurements. You're going to get nice straight lines. You want to make sure they are too. You don't want one end to be 1/4 or 1/2 an inch, and the other end, or 1/4 inch, and then the other end to be, greater than that. You don't want angles. You want everything to be straight and even, so that when you go to fold this up, there won't be any issues with it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just cut this quickly, and then when I come back, I want to talk a little bit more about what you have to do as far as folding the box. So I've taken 3 corners off of the frame, the box frame, because what we're going to be building here are the risers and edges and tabs to help hold this stuff together. Because if you think about a box, if you've ever taken one apart, you'll note that there are extra elements, right? These little tabs and connection points. So I'm going to do this last one over here. And you want to think about how this is going to fold, and they're all the same, okay? So you'll note that I took off the corner and I left this one square. That square is going to be the tab, okay? So this I'm going to bring over here to this side and cut off this edge. These are going away. And I'm going to take off this one rectangle here. So first I'll cut this. And I'm going to cut, I'm not going to cut this off, I'm going to leave this side still attached, but I'm going to cut all the way through on this coming that way. Okay, so I got rid of that corner. So now I have the four corners with these squares. The next thing is along the lines you've drawn you want to take your blade and score lightly, not cut through, but just lightly along those lines, because when you go to fold, it'll make it easier for you to get a nice clean edge. If you've ever folded a piece of paper and had, maybe because this is a little bit thicker, I don't want to have that crumpled curve. I want to have where you get like wrinkles, right? I want to have it so it's a nice, clean, crisp fold. So I'm going to lightly score these. I've already actually done most of them. I'm just going to hit this one. This is already cut. And just run along this edge. I am cutting the surface, but I'm not cutting through. Okay? So what that gives me is it gives me these nice foldable surfaces, right? And I can fold them the opposite way if I need to, but I mean, what you're looking at here is actually the back of the box you're going to be building, all right? So all of these are going to fold in. Okay, so when you can flip this over and you can see, now you have your frame. This area is going to be the back. This is where you can draw directly onto for your background, or if you do it as a separate piece, that you'll be able to glue that down onto. All right, so this is your background, and the box is going to fold up. So we're not going to fold this until we actually get the other parts assembled. But I do want to show you once, and I'll probably repeat this, how to go about folding. So every edge has the tabs on them. And you're going to want to bring those tabs in so that they come up against this surface. Okay? And they're going to come in like this. And you're going to glue those into place. All right. You want to make sure that you want to do it one at a time. You don't want to worry about the top edges yet. You want to bring those in and glue them, and make sure that when you glue them, they're nice and square, right? That they're even. They're not. You don't want this to happen. You want them to be nice and square. Okay. And you glue them into place. If you use hot glue, be careful. If you use super glue, also be careful, don't get it on your hands. Other glues will work. Tape, you can even use tape if you wanted to, but remember that people are going to see the outside, and we want to deal with the outside so it looks as a part of the sculpture. Okay. If you do use tape, maybe you incorporate tape. Maybe that becomes part of the imagery. All right, depends on how you go about doing it. There's a lot of ways to put this together, okay? But I tend to use glue. I use super glue for it. And you're going to do all four of these corners. So once you get that glued in, then you're going to fold the top edge over that tab, over the top. And then this will come, this other shorter edge will come down over the top of that. And again, when you glue them in place, you want to glue them so that they're nice and square, right? You want to get nice, clean. You don't want any sloppy edges because you want this box to be really crisp and rectangular. Any slight variation will cause an issue down the road potentially. So you want to make sure you get them all nice and straight. But again, that's after we build the rest of the pieces and put them into the inside of this area, the box. Okay. You don't need a lot of glue. You don't need a ton of glue. You just need enough to hold them in place, and then you should be good to slide or put your your stuff into there. Okay, you don't need a big globs of glue coming off the edges. Once you've cut out all the parts, all your different layers, you're going to start assembling these things together. There are different ways to put the parts together, and if you remember, I left the neck long on these so that I could attach the head, but I didn't want the head to be like right down against that. I want it to come off the surface slightly. I want there to be a bit of space between the two of them. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this one is fold a little bit of the end of this over. I can fold it again to make a little square area, but I think I'm going to leave it like this. I don't want it too far off. And I'm going to attach this to that little tab. So if you can see this little tab right here. Right? So I'm going to glue that onto the back. All of these different connectors that we're going to use, I'm going to actually have still images for you to take a better look because the quality of my video, I know. So you'll be able to see some of the ones I used. This is much bigger. This is more exaggerated, just so you can see what it would look like. This would be something I might use if you were doing like the ones my high school students did, where this is about an inch off the surface. So I'm going to have more still shots of that and here's a template that I used where you can see how it folds, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, you're going to be creating different ways to connect these up. So I would go in next and I would put a little glue on the end here and glue that, but you have to make sure you have it in the right spot. You don't want to glue it on there and have it be, crooked. You want it to be straight so that it makes sense for the viewer. I want him looking down, so I want that right over just under his ear. Okay. These are all little connectors that I'll be, again, showing in the still video imagery of how you might go about spacing the objects. So different shapes. This little piece is a smaller version of this. You could also use kind of like a half of an I-beam. The idea that one structure would go here, another one would go there between the two and raise it off the surface. Here's a variation of that where it's kind of a zigzag. All right, so again, a surface, a layer here on that, and then this back piece would be on the other surface. This little piece is folded in 4 sections, and it has this little edge right here as a tab. So when it folds into a small box, triangular box, like a prism. Those fold one direction, and they are scored just like the larger box that you're making, the frame you're making. In the opposite direction, on the other side, I scored these little tabs, and what happens is that this one end goes against the surface, and the other end would go against one of the layers. Okay, a little prism-shaped beam to hold and separate the elements. Okay, so what that means is, just to show again, this is scored on one side, right? So you can fold these over. This is a little tab, and it fits inside there, making a triangular tube. And then on the other side, these are scored in the opposite direction, so they fold over. So when you put it together, and you want to glue that little tab on the interior, doesn't have to be the same width. It can, but it doesn't have to be. And then these would have glue on them and get glued against one surface, and these would go against another surface on the other side. Okay. So what does this look like when you're getting closer to the end? Once you start gluing these things together, now remember, you're going to be layering different elements on top of each other, right? They're going to be coming up off the surface, the background of that box. This box, right? They're going to be coming off that background of that box, coming towards the viewer, right? Coming away from that surface, layered one on top of the other. Now, some of them may lay right against the surface, and others may have spacers between them. So when you start to construct your layers, putting them together, you're going to end up with something like this. And again, I'm going to have still images of these. So here's the graphite version, where I had the character, my Jacques Cousteau character, a person, and his air tanks, and he's sitting in the boat, and you see where, you know, like I said, his hand, now this is right up against that other surface. That's not glued in place, right? The hand is coming off the surface. It's in front of the drawing, so it looks like he's sitting there, and the elbow cuts through just like the waist, and looks like he's sitting in the boat. And then I put the tanks behind him, and the seagulls behind that, and even his head is separated from that back. So the spacers, right, the spacers on there are going to be keeping things separate from the surface. These tabs will be sitting against the back of that box. The seagulls, the backs of their wings are attached. They were folded and attached to the back of his back and the back of the air tank. His neck, again, I folded that over. It's sitting pretty tight against there, but I didn't want it to be too far. But you can see where it's starting to get that sense of dimensionality. I also played around with curving the paper so that the wing curves up or down depending on which bird, and his arm a little bit on this one. I'm going to show you another one in a second. So that looks like he's waving, and he's kind of leaning over the boat, right? I just a slight curve to the paper, so he looks like he's sitting over the surface, right? So that's going to sit. Actually, I'll show you this first. I started assembling this one. This is the box for the graphite drawing. You can see the drawings that I've done just quickly on the back, on the surface. And notice how this edge does overhang slightly, but people will be able to see in because it is dimensional. So I brought the ocean up along the riser, the clouds, you can still see them all the way around. And then the fish that's waving, for this one, I decided to have it raised off the back surface so that when he's sitting in the boat waving to the fish will be in front of the boat, okay? And both of these pieces are attached to the riser and the backside of the outer frame, the outer edge, okay? So when this folds over, see, this is why you want to do all the gluing at the same time, all four of these corners first on the inside, get all those done, then fold this over and have this over the top, because it makes it a little bit more easy to be able to fold these. And you want to make sure, again, just, I know I said it once, that the shorter edge is over the longer edge, okay? So let me just get these in place so I can show you the rest of this fish. So now the illusion of the fish is that he is sitting in front of the boat. Sorry. He's sitting in front of the boat and down in front, and I'm going to just glue this in place. Add a little glue. So again, the tab, this piece folds over the tab. I'm going to hold that square so it glues really well. I'm not gluing this top edge yet. Hopefully super glue is fairly quick. And again over here, I don't need a ton. Make sure that's square like that. And then I'm going to put the glue on here. And then running out of glue. Make sure those are squared up nicely. All right, so now I have the box. Now, assembling this, you can put this in place before you get the interior parts, but you're going to have to figure out how to get the interior structure into there, and so you might want to leave one end open. Thankfully, I know that this will fit because I've already tried it out, and when I place him in, I haven't glued it down yet, as you know. Oops. I want the seagull to come up a little further. You can see that there's layers happening there, and those spacers are holding that boat off the back surface. Okay, I'm going to glue that in place also, and I'll come back to you. So I glued the boat into place with Jacques sitting in the boat, and he's waving to his fish friend. You'll note I curved the tail a bit, kind of breaking that plane, so it looks like it's almost like they could both emerge from that opening. And I also remembered to glue this on. I actually only attached it at the tank. It goes around and I curved that slightly also, so it would come around his shoulder and look like it was passing over his shoulder, and again over his other shoulder to his back. I'm going to try something here. I don't know if that's any better to see the shadows, so to get some idea of spacing. I don't think it is. Okay. All right. I'm going to do another, and then we're going to talk about the final product.
These images are going to be of the things I mentioned in the prior video that maybe were difficult for you to see. I wanted to provide you with close-ups of these different elements so you get a better sense of what I was talking about. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. So here's the template that I used with my school class that were the 1-inch spacers. This is the both sides, and remember I mentioned earlier you have to score both sides of these in different ways. So when you fold them up, they take on the shape of that prismatic column that you can use if you needed to, but you'd want to work much smaller. There's some more images of those. The one on the right, the one at the top of the image on the right is actually very large for what you'd be doing. That was another, I believe, 1-inch. So it's almost the depth of it is the depth of your project. The idea here is that you want to be, for some elements, these spacers, you want to be fairly precise with your measurements so that you can get even sizes for things. That said, not all of them have to have that. Some of them can be just as you will. Try them out and come up with different iterations of it. Whatever works. This image on the right, these were the little pieces I was trying to show you, the different spacers I was using for the projects I was putting together. Like I said, you can try different things to see what works best for you. Here's some images of just the trying to show the spacers and the curvature of the paper to get different effects. You don't need a lot of glue. You don't want a lot of big globs of glue sticking out all over the place. Just enough to hold things together. These are just different images from different angles to try to give you a sense of where the spacers are and the spacing of the different elements. I tend to, use a lot of layers. I like the effect, but there's a point of no return too. You don't want to go too far. You don't want it to be overpowering. Minimal can work well if you're thoughtful as to how you use a few things instead of a lot. But also having lots of little details that sort of catch the viewer's eye, those are pretty effective. Of course, then you got to figure out how to put it together. Just some different angles of the colored one where you can see you want the illusion of depth and dimension, but these are flat pieces of paper. The riser for the back of the air tank that would be attached to the figure at the back, and the close-up of the dolphin halo that I ended up cutting out from this. This shows the scoring of the lines on the back of the frame. Remember, those were there because it would make it easier to cut or to fold those corners. Again, you're just lightly scoring just the skin of the paper. You don't want to cut all the way through. This image is showing the graphite frame before it was folded up and the composition was placed inside, and a close-up there of the fish attached to the riser and to the back side of the front edge. And here's the graphite also before it was folded with a little more dramatic lighting, so you can see the shadows, the effect of the shadow, and that it shows how, you know, how far off that surface. Yes, it wasn't that far, but it has the feeling of being quite removed from that background. Oh, sorry, cut off the edge there. So it says this is the inside of the frame. You know, I've chosen to put the background in the back of the box and on the riser. So again, you know, you're thinking about the interior. People are going to see the inside of this, and they might see the inside edges. I chose, instead of doing it on a separate sheet, to put it on the back of the frame because it would just, it's another element I don't have to deal with. I could, that said, you might build it all and then slide that in and glue it down instead of having to figure out how to connect the spacers from the back of the box to the figure. I also mentioned, you know, the one on the left, it's an in-process piece. Those scribbly lines, they're not finished, and you don't want to look. You want the craftsmanship to be of high quality. You want it to be rich and dense and solid color when you're doing these. You don't really want to see the white paper sticking through anywhere. Just a couple views of the color one before I folded up the box. And the last two. These are both of those that I showed in the video. Yeah, I think they turned out pretty well. Again, I do want to finish out the outside edges and see where they go from there.
So here are two variations of the same image. The one in graphite and the one in colored pencil. You're going to say, Greg, they don't look finished. Well, you're right. I haven't done the outside yet. I actually don't know how I want to finish them up. I know they won't be like that. What I'm going to do is cut strips separate. They may be, I'm thinking of doing like a seaweed kind of motif around the outside edge of it. And that'll take a little bit longer than I have before I have to get this to you. But these should be completed somehow. You don't want to leave them blank. Remember, when you were looking at the retablo, they were ornate. And again, they're meant to draw the viewer in, not take away from the image, but to be part of it. So I will be coming up with some kind of outer surface that also strengthens the form. If you're finding that you're getting a little bit of a warp in the it could be a slight measurement it's off, or just the quality of the paper, something going on there. Adding another element to that will strengthen that and hide and help out that surface if things like that are happening. Okay. You know, again, these are dimensional. They come off that surface. I like how this one turned out. I don't know which one I like better. They both have good qualities. I kind of like the drawing of his face in the graphite one more, but I do like the way that the color really stands out and pushes that that figure out of the plane, off that surface. Like I said, it's like the different elements could come right off of there, right? So I got the halo on here. I haven't done that on the graphite one. There's a lot of spaces, little spacers there. To the point of the spacers, the more structural the spacers, the stronger the overall sculptural form, not aesthetically, but how well it's made, the craftsmanship of it. So there's a lot of parts to this, and you're going to make mistakes. Will you cut something wrong? Yes. Will you draw something and have to redraw it 12 times and cut it again? Yes. Will you get glue on your fingers? Of course. Will you cut yourself? I hope not. Please be careful. Don't let that happen. Don't get, if you're using a hot glue gun, don't get burned. But things will happen. Mistakes will be made. It's not the end of the world, you know. And in the end, I think you'll be happy with what you come up with.
All right, everyone. So that's pretty much it. I hope that you will put this together. I hope you'll find it challenging. I hope it is fun. You know, it's supposed to be fun. If you don't enjoy it, you're not getting anything out of it. I wish I could be there, you know, at the studio with you, answering questions if you're finding any issues and you're struggling at all. But I think if you can problem solve. These are like puzzles. You know, putting together artwork is like doing a puzzle. You're trying to figure out how best to make this thing successful. And hopefully next year, hopefully we'll be able to meet in Fredonia, and NYSSSA will be running again like usual, and we can get in the studio and make some really cool stuff there. That's pretty much it. I hope you stay safe and enjoy your year and make lots of art. Do that first and foremost. And my daughter says I'm supposed to tell you to follow my channel and my Insta. I don't know. I don't know what that is. You know, I don't do those things. So, well, anyway, this was fun. Thanks for looking me up, and take care.